Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Augusto Goncalves. I'm a Forge advocate here at Autodesk, and today is the training on the Design Automation API. This is the .NET Core track. We have another track going on with Node.js, so if you want to move to the other one, it's also okay. And today we'll be using .NET Core to create our application that connects to Design Automation and perform some changes on files. So this week's training is are 4 days. The trainings are following the learnforge.autodesk.io tutorial. We have 2 parallel tracks, Node.js and .NET Core. For the training, we'll have 4 sessions during the day. So we're going to show you some instructions and then get back later to review those steps and move to the next step. You can follow the steps, you can ask questions. That's the main idea. During the sessions, we are going to code and show you how it works. And later, you can write your own code and, as I said, submit your questions. We already completed most of the trainings for the week. Tuesday, we did the upload and translate. Wednesday was about accessing models on BIM 360 or Fusion Team. Yesterday was about extending the viewer and creating dashboards. And finally today is about modifying your models with Design Automation. Okay, day 4, modify our models. So let's get started with today's topic. The purpose of today's training is to create an application like this, where you can specify a new width and height, choose a file, and trigger a Design Automation job to open that file, modify the attributes, and give you back the results. In this case, we have a form to modify, to pass the information, and you have to select what we are going to execute and get back the results. Design Automation is really about automating your jobs. So you can automate this to get the information from a database, get the file from the input source, and execute everything in the background. So that's also possible, and that's the real purpose of Design Automation. On today's training, we have this session now at 8 a.m. We're going to show you the introduction and setup, then be back at 10 a.m. To do the server and API app interface, then 12 p.m. to do the plugin and bundle, and 2 p.m. to define the activity and to execute the work item. Okay, so let's start with the first session that we are going to prepare the basics and get the setup done. Design Automation API, it's the ability to run the Revit, Inventor, 3D Max or AutoCAD engine on the cloud. It's the same engine you have on your desktop environment, except that it's running headless, and but you can use the same API, the same features you have. When preparing or when automating your code on the cloud, you always have to think that you don't have any interface and you don't have the interaction with the user. So it's in batch mode. So you submit all the data to execute, submit the code to execute in the data, in the files, sorry, and that will execute and give you back the results. There is no interaction. It's in batch mode. We can run Design Automation from any device. No, it's a REST application, so you can call it from your mobile application or website application. That will then call the Design Automation API, call the engine to execute the code. For Inventor is the Inventor server that we see on the desktop. For AutoCAD is the AutoCAD console, and for Revit is the headless version of Revit. To execute Design Automation, we have our app code and the data source. We can run our code without data source. Let's say we just want to create a new file. That's also possible. But typically we have the input, the data, the input file on the source. and that is then sent to design automation for execution. It will execute. There is a queue for running the jobs, and the job will execute over time. And at the end, you get the output of that execution. That output can be a report, can be derivatives, can be modified data. It's anything, right? It's just you input a file, input data, and you get output files and data. The only thing to consider is that, as I mentioned, there is no connection. It runs on a batch mode, and there is no connection to other services. So you have to provide all the data at the beginning and get all the results at the end of the process. So there is a question if we can run design automation for Civil 3D. Yes, we can. Actually, Civil 3D runs on the same engine as AutoCAD. So you just have to use the latest version or the current latest version plus and the previous latest version, which is 2021 and 2022. And the AutoCAD engine should support Civil 3D workflows. And the data that we pass to design automation, we just have to make that data available on the cloud. So design automation can grab that data to execute the activity. The data can be on any location: Azure, Google, Dropbox, Box, any location. We send the link to that data to design automation with permissions if it's password protected. Design automation will download that from the source, execute, run our code, and then upload back the results to the location we want. It's very important to notice that once the execution is done, we're going to delete all the data. We don't keep anything from your files. We just keep the code to execute. So we keep that as long as you want, right? You can define the code to run and run multiple times. Every time it runs, we get the data, run, and delete the data at the end. So what do we need to create these design automation activities? We need a Forge account, we need a Forge app, and do we need AutoCAD and Revit and 3D Max? Well, we need them to execute, to actually create new code that's required. But for today, to make it simple, we're not going to create the plugins, right? That is just because of the time. Oops, come back here. We're going to provide you the app bundle, the code to execute. And but if you're going to create your own activity, you need the engines to develop and test your code locally. So you need the engine that you are going to execute. But for today, we don't need it. What else do we need? We need Visual Studio. You can download the Community Edition and make sure to install the ASP.NET and .NET Desktop Development workloads. As I said, we're not going to create the .NET plugin today, but you definitely need that later. So select the .NET Desktop Development. Design automation, when it's done, it's going to call us back to notify that the job's done. This is called webhook or callbacks, and to make it work, we need to expose our machine on the web. So as our machine is running as our code is running on our computer, which is a local host, it's not accessible to the web, right? This is for protection. But you can create a tunnel that will expose your machine to a server like Design Automation. To do that, we are going to use ngrok. It's one of the tools available, and it's very easy and convenient to use. So that's what we are using today. So you also need to download that. So let's see what we have to do. Let me switch here and go to my browser. So first step is to go to forge.autodesk.com and if this is your first time, click on sign in, and you have to sign in with your Autodesk credentials. If you don't have it, click on the create account to create your account. Once you're done, you can come back to this page and sign in with your account. So I'm going to sign in with my account. Okay, as I did the training Tuesday and Wednesday, I have two, or I may have more apps here. But if you haven't done any training, this page should be empty. So, but let's create a new app, and we can leave all the APIs selected. There is no cost on selecting all the APIs. The actual cost is on running the APIs. So just leave it selected for now, and we are going to call this Forge Training Day 4 training. And this is the callback URL, which is not used today, but it's used on other trainings and other codes, other samples. We always use the same callback URL to make it simpler, so you can always reuse the same application on all of your samples. So let's select like this, but again, it's not used today. And let's create the app. Now we have our application for today. We have the client ID and the client secret, and everything else is in here. We also need visualstudio.microsoft.com. If you come here, you can download the community edition. Just click here in 2019, and that should be all that you need here. Once you finish installing, you should have the Visual Studio icon on your taskbar. Last, we need the ngrok. Let's ngrok download. And just download for Windows. Should be quick, really fast. Once you download, it should be a zip. Something like on your downloads, you should have a zip file like this, ngrok stable anything. And then you once you unzip it, it should be a folder with an exe inside that folder. So now we know that we have the ngrok running. So that's all we need. That's all we need for this time. So this is your turn to do this, to create your Forge account, create your Forge application, install Visual Studio with the two workloads, and also download and unzip ngrok. So let's see if you have any questions here. John is taking most of the questions. You can use AutoCAD. Yes, that's right.
I'm trying to find the blog post from Adam Nagy using on progress callback, you know.
Okay, so that's the question from Jesus. Triggering external events or dynamic model updates for Revit has no sense in design automation. So I believe that external events, you were talking about the model update API in Revit, right? The model update, if I'm getting this right, it's about rendering on the 3D model space. And yeah, as there is no interface, there is no reason for you to update the UI or the visual of the model, right? So yeah, it doesn't make sense to use that specific API. Remember that Revit is headless, so there is no interface. The same applies for all the engines. The engines are headless. There is no interface, but you have sometimes to, let's say in Revit, you have to regenerate the model, which will create the geometry just to compute the geometry, not to actually render the geometry. So I think I'm getting your answer, your question. So yeah, you are saying that you like to task scheduling, for example. How would the performer task weekly? So design automation will not execute the job on a timely on something like that, on a chronological type of tasking, right? Execute every week. You have to create a code that will trigger design automation for you every 24 hours, every Friday night, or something like that. So yes, that's definitely possible, but you have to use another queuing system or job management system to handle and queue all the jobs for you. So as you were asking this, let me show you something that is out of the scope of today's training, but you can take a look. Is a library for .NET called Hangfire.NET Core. And there are many libraries out there to do job queuing, right? Or how to control the execution of jobs. Hangfire works for .NET Core and allows you to create recurrent jobs like this. So let's say you wanna you have your Design Automation code that will trigger Design Automation and do all the steps that you need to do to run your code. And you just say, okay, add a job. In this case, run Design Automation, and that will run daily, for instance. Or there are many other options here. When you have something like this, you just have to keep your application running on a server that will then be running all the time, and in this case daily, will execute your code, and your code will then call Design Automation and trigger your automation process. So there is another question here. Let me close this. If you want to copy this link, that's your chance. There's another question. I'm getting error message when I try to download ngrok. Sorry, you don't have permission to visit this site. This is probably your firewall or your company's firewall that is blocking you from downloading this file here. But let me try. So ngrok.com/download, download for Windows. Yeah, it's working. It's probably something on your network that is blocking you. So if you can try a different network, or check with your account, your network admin, to unblock this. Okay, so any other questions? This session, so we're now done with this session. It's time for you to create your account, download Visual Studio and ngrok, and create your app. We'll be back at 10 a.m. Pacific time in roughly 1 hour and 40 minutes from now to complete the next step. And that should give you plenty of time to download and install the other tools. And if you have any questions in this process, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom. You can always use the chat window. Also use the chat window, or as soon as we're back, we're going to review all the questions and work that with you. Okay, so see you in 1 hour and 4 minutes.
See you.
Thank you, João. All right, so let's start session 2. Before we go to this session, do you have any other questions? I saw a few questions on the on the chat window, mostly related to the code. And yeah. Yeah, there was a question about the other training yesterday about the view clusters, which is an extension that you can load. Yeah, there is a specific file for that. You can just load the view clusters extension. And yeah, there is also a question about that may be a problem with the SignalR reference. We're going to address that. And yeah, let's see. Let's move to this step, and then we can work out the code we have to fix. All right, so let's go. On this step, we're going to create a new project, ASP.NET Core Web Application. We are going to set up the environment variables, create a basic server, authentication, and the basic UI for the application. Okay, so let's see how we can complete those steps. Right here, let me launch Visual Studio. Come on. And let me also open the tutorial that we are following. And today we are following the modify your models. So let's continue without code, and let me move this. Let me move this to the side here. Oops, here, and have the tutorial on this side. So the purpose of the application is to create a sample like this that you can select a file and modify its attributes. So we are going to start create a server and basic UI. We are going to select .NET Core, and this is a link to download the source code ready to use, and we are going to create a server. The first step is to launch ngrok and get the environment and get the address for the machine using that. So this is what we need: ngrok, http 3000, etc, etc. Let me copy this, and let's go to the download where we have the ngrok. Let's also get the command line for Windows. Let me drag and drop this here. So that's the application. That's one way to get access to it, or you can, of course, you can go to the specific folder. So cd downloads /ngrok, that's the folder, and then we just type the ngrok command line we got from the tutorial, ngrok 3000, etc. So let's hit enter. We should see something like this. So the application, yeah, there is an update, don't worry. Our session expires in 1 hour, in 2 hours, so that should be more than enough. If, well, as our training today may go longer than that, we have to run this again, and in that case the URL will change, but we have to keep record of this guy here. Okay, so moving forward, yeah, there is just a warning that ngrok is actually exposing your machine on the web. So keep this running during your development, but not after that. This is just for you to test, right? So let's go to .NET Core, and let's create our application file, new project. And we are going to select the ASP.NET Core web application and hit next. And here is very important to use the same name because there is some references to the namespace. And hit create. Okay, so this is happening because I did this training yesterday or the day before, and there is already a project there. But today's project is a bit different. So let me go to that folder, and let me go here and delete this one. This is from yesterday. We delete, sorry, the day before. Now hit create. Okay, so we are going to select empty. We are also going to disable HTTPS. We don't need this for this sample, and hit create. Now we need to add the references we need on the from NuGet. So let's click here on the Solution Explorer, right click on the project, and go to manage NuGet packages. Let me move this away and go to browse. Stay here. And we are going to use the Autodesk Forge as it shows here. Let's select and hit install. We're also we're also going to use the design automation reference, design automation, and here it is, and install. And we need the Microsoft JSON reference. So let me hit OK. Let me copy this here, and that's the one. Click to install. Remember to switch to version 3. That's the one we are using here. And hit install. Okay, what's next? Now we have the project here. Let's add the environment variables. So again, right click on the project and go to properties and go to debug. And we have just one. Let's add the other ones. So Forge client ID, we add them here. And the client ID value is coming from our application. So let's go back to the application on Forge and copy this value here and paste in here. Now going back to the tutorial, the next variable is the client secret. Let's add it and paste here and copy the value. Just double click to copy and double click again to paste. Last is the webhook URL. So that's the ngrok address. So webhook URL. Let's go back to the command line, right? Select and Control C and Control V. Okay, so let's also fix this to 3000. This is just a standard we use on all of our samples. Okay, so that should be it for the environment variables. Keep moving, just double check we have the launch, we have the environment variables and the URL and the disable SSL. Let's go to the program.cs and add the namespaces we need. So go to our code program and we need those two namespaces. And it says here to replace the main function, the contents of the main function with this here. So let's copy and here's our main. Let's get rid of this and replace with this. It's just adding the environment variables and design automation support for our application. Next, go to the startup.cs and copy and add this missing namespace right here. And it says to replace the content of the startup with this content here. So we are going to replace this content with our content. So what we are doing is we are setting the compatibility version to 3 and adding the Newton soft reference. And yeah, that's what we discussed this morning. It's missing one reference. Yeah, which is a bit strange because it shouldn't have changed that much. But yeah, so thank you, John, for investigating that. Let me get the reference name here. Give me just a sec. There's probably some changes on the package that will now require this, so we probably have to change our project. So go to manage NuGet packages and add. Oops, what did I do? So we're looking the Microsoft ASP.NET Core SignalR protocols Newton Soft and select the 3.1.14 and hit install. That should fix it, right? And accept. And isn't that the one? Oh, probably is in some namespace now. Oh, now it's fixed. It's just taking some time to fix. Let's build to double check. Okay, success. So all good. Thank you. Now is the OAuth controller that will create the access token to upload the input and output file. So it's essentially just an internal access token with data read and write scope, because design automation needs to get the input file and send back the output file. So we are storing that information on the OSS bucket. So that's why we need this OAuth controller. So let's copy this and go to the our code and create a controllers folder and add a new folder that we are calling controllers, and hit add new controller, empty API controller, and hit add, and we are calling OAuth, and give it a moment. Okay, so let's replace this with our content. Okay, so this is just creating the access token. Okay, hit save. What else? So at this point, we should have the sample with one controller folder and one file inside that folder. Next is the basic UI for .NET Core. Let me go back one step. We are going to create a basic UI with HTML5 and JavaScript. It's very basic. It's just to have the interface of our application. We are selecting .NET Core. The main difference of interface between .NET Core and Node is essentially the SignalR on .NET and the WebSocket implementation on, Socket.io implementation for Node.js. The rest is essentially the same. The code is not that different. The interface is just the technology that is used to do WebSockets. So let's copy this and create a wroot folder and create an index.html inside that wroot folder. So right click on the project and add a new folder, www.root. The icon will change because that's a default folder for .NET Core. And let's create a new item, and we are going to select HTML page and call it index, which is basic HTML page. Let's paste the content here, and this is just the form, right, with the width and height, option to select the input file, and list of the existing activities. And there is a modal dialog, just a pop-up where you can create your new activity. Next, we have to create this designautomation.js, and it should be inside the JS folder. So new folder, we're calling JS, and add again a new item, which would be a JavaScript file that we are calling Forge Design Automation. And let's copy and paste here. So it contains a lot of things, but essentially at the beginning, it's going to prepare some buttons and start the WebSocket connection. It's going to list all the activities, engines, and bundles, and that's the function to list them. And here at the bottom, I have the create app bundle, which is getting the data and submitting to Design Automation. That's the execution of that, of the create bundle and create activity. Is just calling our endpoints. And here's the interesting one where we submit the work item, where we get the input file and send that to Design Automation. And this is to show us the output, the log. And at the bottom, we have the WebSocket, in this case, SignalR connection to Forge, to our server side, sorry. Okay, that should be it. So at this point, we should have, let me expand here, we should have the JavaScript and the HTML. We can run this with the browser, but it's not going to do anything yet. So let's run it. We should only see in the interface with all the buttons, but they are not working yet because we haven't implemented the server side. And why is this triggering the wrong address? Sometimes this happens, I don't know why, but it doesn't, if I don't click save right after I change the properties, it loses everything. I'm really sorry. Let's do it again quickly. So just adding I think it's a bug on Visual Studio. It loses everything if I don't save right after. Client secret. And last is the Forge webhook URL, which is coming from here. Okay, let's save this time. Save again, just to be sure. Okay, launch localhost and enable, and let's hit save. Okay, now it's 3000. It's as expected. I think this is a bug on the system. I've seen it happen a few times to me. Okay, so what do we have here? We have our application. We have the form on one side to enter the new width and height. We can choose a file, but it's not doing anything, right? It's not completed. And also there is a pop-up to select the bundle and the engine to create, but there's nothing there just yet. So this is the purpose of this session, to have this interface with your client ID and secret, webhook, and all of the other things. And if you have the same problem, remember that as soon as you finish setting up the environment variables, to hit save. Otherwise, you may lose it just like I did. Okay, so now it's your turn to create the application. Let's see here. To create the project, set up the environment variables, server and OAuth controller, and the basic UI. There's a lot to do, and you have around 1 hour and 40 minutes to complete this, and we check in again at 12 p.m. Pacific time in 1 hour and 40 minutes. Is there any question I can help you with? Any questions? Okay, so see you in 1 hour and 40 minutes. Make sure to complete those steps. If you have any questions, use the Q&A or chat to post your questions. See you soon.
See you soon.
All right, so welcome to session 3. Now it's about prepare the plugin and create the app bundle. So that's the code that will execute on design automation. And before we go there, I saw that there are a few questions on the chat window, and it's essentially about the reference we added for the missing package, right? So that should be in the comments if you need that. Thank you, John. And let's go for this session. So here we have to create a plugin that contains the code and that will execute from design automation. And also the logic to upload and create that bundle, and to execute the bundle, sorry, with design automation. Because of the time, we're not going to create the actual code, but you can download that from the sample, right? So if you go to the folder, you see the link you see here on the screen, you can download that, and this link is also available on the tutorial. So we're going to download the bundle, which contains the code for the plugin, and then proceed with design automation piece. So let's see how that will work. Okay, so that's where we left last time. That's the code, the tutorial on the left, and Visual Studio on the right. And let's move to prepare plugin. So to explain what's going on, if you're going to create your plugin here, you probably need something like a zipping tool. There are many options, of course. The benefit about 7-zip is that we can run with command line, so it's a bit easier to automate the process of creating the zip for us. Also, we need Visual Studio 2017 or newer to create that. So it's very common that the developer working with the plugin is not the same developer working with the web piece. So that happens. In that case, you can have different versions, right? You can even use different languages. Here we are using .NET Core for the web piece, and the plugin is .NET Framework. To develop the plugin, you need the respective engine. So here are the overview where you can download the trial, and if you need to keep working, use the ADN membership, for instance, to have the AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, 3D Max for development. As I said, we need to create a bundle, which is a zip that contains the DLL and the package contents with the description of our plugin. So it doesn't really matter which engine we're selecting here, because as soon as I click on the engine, there is always the option to download the zip instead of creating the code. I'm just going to quickly mention what it is about creating the plugin, if you want to do that later. So you have to create a project, just like we did, but that's an additional project for AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, 3D Max. We need to add a few references depending on the engine, and this is the actual command that we'll run. For AutoCAD, what we are doing is we are opening the drawing, searching for all the elements, and inside those elements we are updating, let me go back here, we are updating the parameters that we have, width and height, and then we save the file at the end. The saved file at the end of the process is always output file, because that's how Design Automation will get that file after here. If I go back and select Revit, it's very much the same. We'll create a code, we add the references, and instead of changing the parameter of every element, we have to search for windows, because that's how this code is prepared to work. And we change the width, the height and width of those windows. And as a similar thing, at the very end, we save the file using the output name. That's what we would expect at the end of this process. So it's always saving as output file. Okay, so as I said, it doesn't really matter which engine, but I will select AutoCAD. Oops, sorry, not here. Select AutoCAD here and download the bundle. And it says that I have to download the bundle and save it on the wroot /bundles folder. So that's my zip. Let me go back to my project here, and wroot, add a new folder, and I will call it bundles. And let me open that with File Explorer. Okay, so let me come back here and get my downloads. Oops, come here. Showing folder. So that's my bundle that I just downloaded as AutoCAD. And just so you can, if you want to do something like this, you can select Revit as well and download the bundle for Revit. Showing folder again, and let me refresh this. Yeah, move here. So now we have two bundles, DWG and RVT. That should be all for now. And select the engine, download the bundle, and then skip this session. Just one more thing before we skip. As I said, we create the code, we create the package contents for each of the engines, and we also have to, that's where I said we need the 7-zip. We have this post build event that will get the contents of the project and move that to a zip file. So it's just making it easier for us to create the zip file with the bundle. we need to bundle that application and create a zip, right? One very common problem is that once we create the bundle, let me open the RVT, we need this folder with .bundle inside the zip. So that's how the system will recognize the bundle. So it's true for all of the bundles. We have the bundle name .bundle, and inside the bundle folder we have the contents and the package content and the rest of our code running here. Okay, so we can now go to the upload plugin at the end, or we can move all the way back and skip this session. Okay, now we need the code to upload the app bundle. As our bundle is ready, we have to upload that. So let's select .NET Core, and we are going to create this design automation controller inside the controllers folder. So let's come here, right click and add controller, API empty controller, and add, and we are calling design automation controller. So this file is the one that will contain everything that we need for this sample. So it's a big file, but here we just have the basic skeleton for it. So let's copy and replace here, so we can then understand what we have. So at the top we have a few class variables. The hosting that will host that contains information about the server. This is a design automation SignalR connector, so that we can get the responses. This is just some variables to help us with the process. So we know that the bundles folder on our local environment is the bundles, is the webhook plus bundles, and our nickname is our Forge client ID. The nickname is used as a prefix on everything we do on design automation. The reason is we may have our activities and activities defined by the system. So we have to separate the two, right? So we can see only the activities we have and the activities the system created by design automation team. So ours will be prefixed by our client ID. So that's the nickname. And we're just using the default, which is the client ID. And we can also have an alias on our activities and bundles. And for now I'm using dev. You may have different alias, dev, production, and adjust to that. And that's a design automation wrapper, the SDK that we can use to call all the endpoints we have. So the constructor of the class is just storing those elements, and here we are going to add everything we need. At the very end, we just have the SignalR hub. In most cases, we don't need this class hub, but here we need, because we want to expose the connection ID to the browser. And the reason is we want to identify different users, because we send the request to design automation. When we get the response back, we need to send to the correct user. So that's why we are tracking them by the connection ID. Okay, so that's the structure. The first thing is to add the get local bundles method. So this method is, let's add it here. So this method is going to my local folder, the local bundles folder, and getting all the zip files and returning that to the client. It's very simple. It's just return the list. The available engines is connecting to design automation to get all the engines that we can use, right? In this case would be AutoCAD 20, 21, 22, 23, etc. All the versions we support. So let's copy this and add here as well. It's using the API to get the OAuth controller, the access token, and then returning all the engines to the user. And finally, that's the code to create the app bundle. So let's copy this and add in here. So the code to create app bundle is getting the zip from the bundles folder and the engine we selected. And by default, I'm using the bundle name as the name of the zip prefixed with app bundle. This is just simplify, right? we check if the zip is there, and then before we create the app bundle, we check if we already have that bundle. If we do, if we don't have it, let's create like this. If we have it already, we are going to create a new version for that bundle, right? So if you have to change your DLL, it means that now you have a new version of your code. You can upload a new version of that DLL, but you have to tell the system to use the v+1 version of that bundle, and finish with the alias. And after we decide if this is version 1 or version +1, we have to upload the zip file to design automation, and that's the code to upload to the location. So design automation, when we create the bundle, design automation send me back a URL that I can upload my file to that URL. So that's where the bundle will be hosted, the actual code. And last, we have to set up the SignalR, and to do that, we have to create this class that we already have, and add this routing to the startup.cs. So let's copy this and go back to our startup.cs and add it right here. So it's just routing the endpoint SignalR to the design automation hub on our code. Okay, now if we run, we should see all our local bundles and all the engines we have available. So let's run it. Okay, so this is not working yet because we don't have the activity, but if you click on the top right, we can see the zip files that I have and the engines. Why they are not here? Let's see. Let's see what we did wrong. Developer tools. Okay, so it's throwing an exception here. Let's see what it is. Wait, I have replaced that. Not valid. Okay, so let's double check. It's saying that the client ID is not valid. Forge client ID, client secret. Okay, so let's try again. So John, that's the client ID you shared with me yesterday. Did you delete it?
This is the same. I
Yes.
changed the client secret.
Oh,
I
okay.
generated it. You need again?
Yes, please.
Oh,
I'm reusing that because you have a new trial account.
okay.
Yeah, thank you for the help. So just to explain, on the training we did Monday, I found out that my trial account expired. So João was really quick to share a new trial with me. The trial he was using his account with me. So it's the same ID, right? So, and I was using that, but it seems that he created a new secret, which is what we should be doing because it was exposed here, right? Oops, not his. So that's why it's important to regenerate the secret. So we'll probably do that again today, which is the right way to do.
Yes, sure. I don't want to wake up on Monday and see, oh no,
Thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, now we see the engines. Okay, cool. So those are all the engines available on Design Automation. Oops, let me expand again. So what we have to do here is not yet, because if we try to create this now, this will not work. What we have to do is select the bundle and select the engine we want to run this bundle, right? So right now it's a bit obvious because I have a bundle with DWG on it, and okay, this must go with AutoCAD, right? But that's not always true, because the name of the bundle can be anything. So that's why we don't assume anything. And even in that case, you may have different bundles for different versions of the engines. So let's say on AutoCAD 24, you want to run one code, and AutoCAD 20, you want to run a different code. So that's why you have to select the engine and the bundle with the code that you want to execute. All right, so that's all for this step. Once you complete, you should have this list of bundles and a list of engines available for you to try. Let me close this, and yeah, so let's go back here. So this is now your time to download the app bundle. Download the bundles, yes, to the wroot/bundles folder, and create the logic for creating the app bundle. And that should be it for this step. Let's see if we have any questions. Okay, it seems that everything is covered right now. If you are moving ahead, you already have the next step, and if you have questions about the next step, please feel free. You can ask that as well. If not, we'll be back at 2 p.m. in, again, 1 hour and 40 minutes to complete the last step. Let me then pause the recording. Okay, so let's start the session 4. Define activity and execution of the work item. So that's the last session of the day. I saw there was a few questions here. Hopefully you got it working. Chuck Donson, Charles Donson, and what else? I think that's it. Okay, yeah, so those are the questions. Definitely going to review that now. On this next step, we're going to get the code for the activity and the code for work item. So activity is the definition of how we want to execute the code. So we have an app bundle that has that contains a DLL that will execute our code, but we have to tell the system we are expecting one input and one output, or let's say one input file, one input JSON, and one output file. So that's how that's what the activity will define for us, how it works, what's the input and what's the output. Usually we define the activity in the app bundle once or just a few times, and then execute the work item several times. So the work item is the execution of our code. That's where we actually provide the file for the system to execute and get the output after that. So the work item is the execution of our code. Let's see that code in action. So going back to our code, before I start, I just left this window open because I'm looking at my environment variables, and here we can see the webhook URL right here. But if I open my ngrok again, I see that session have expired, which means that I have to run it again, right? So as I'm using the free version of ngrok, I believe I just have 2 hours, so I have to run it again. So I have to Control C, and then run it again. Now I get a new callback. Let me copy this and replace here. HC, yeah, so that's it. Let's click here and click save. You see that this new session is now valid for 1 hour. Should be enough for this step of the tutorial. But if you're running that for a day to debug your application, you probably have to do this a few times during the day. There are a few packages and tools to automatically connect ngrok with your application that can also work. But here we're doing that step one individually, right? But there are some packages that you can run ngrok within your application as well, if you want to explore that. Okay, moving to the activity. Again, .NET Core. The first code, the first function we have is the function to list the attributes. To get the attribute command line okay. I was reading attributes and I got confused. So it's to get the attributes for it and each engine. So in this case, is the command line and the script if needed. What is that? When we execute AutoCAD work items, we have to tell the system, open the AutoCAD engine with those parameters. And also we have to provide a script which contains the actual command that we are going to run, right? Because our .NET code contains a command. And this is the script we have here, and the script contains just one command, update param. The Revit is a bit different. There is no command line in Revit, right? So we are just going to launch Revit, and our plugin will look at the document loaded event and run the code at that point in time. The same applies for Inventor. And 3D Max is very similar to AutoCAD. We'll have a command line as well. It's very similar. So that's this function. Let's copy this, go to our code, Design Automation Controller, and let's add it here. Next is the code to create the activity. To create the activity, we need the command line from the previous method. So let's copy this and see what we have right here. So the create activity is very similar to the create app bundle. We gather the information. Yes, we gather the information here, and we specify that we want to run one specific bundle. That's the name of the activity, and we check if that activity is already defined. If it's not defined, then we are going to create. Our activity is being defined with 2 inputs and 1 output. There is one input file, which is the file that will be opened by the system, one input JSON, and one output file. And as you can see here, the local name of the input uses a predefined tag, which is $input file. This is used by the, if I go up a bit, this is used by the command line right here. So if I check the command line, I can see that I have an argument here, which is the input file path. So I'm telling AutoCAD engine to open that file for me, or Inventor, or Revit, or 3D Max. So they're always passing this input file. If I go back here, I have one more input, which is the JSON, but that is not used by Design Automation code, right? The engine will open this file, and the engine knows that this input JSON will be renamed to params.json inside Design Automation execution. And this is the output file that will be sent to the output location. As you can see here, let me move this and scroll to the left. I'm saying that all 3 files are required here. Sorry, the JSON is not required in this case, but the output is required. Meaning that if my code fails to execute for some reason and I have no output, then the whole Design Automation execution will fail, right? So it's up to us to define how it works. I'm telling I want this to be required. And I'm also saying that they are not zip files. And I can use that zip file to automatically zip and unzip files for me. So if I have to provide multiple inputs that I don't know how many inputs I have, I can provide them as a zip, and then the system will unzip for me so I can work with individual files. Okay, with all of those parameters, I can then define the activity. And the only thing that I'm doing here is that if the activity is already defined, if it's not, and if it's already defined, we're not doing anything. because it's already defined. You may adjust this code to redefine the activity, but there is no problem because for this case, because the activity is connected to one app bundle, and I'm connecting to app bundle by the nickname, bundle, and alias. So if I change the app bundle and update the alias to the new version of my bundle, the activity will recognize that. So I don't have to reconnect the activity to the bundle. Okay, so last we have these get defined activities that will return all the activities that are there, so I can list them to my user. So it's essentially going to the list, getting all the activities and return that to the user. Okay, now we can try this. If we open our code, select the bundle, select the engine, and hit create, it should create the bundle and the activity for us. So let's try this. Click here. And wait for it. Okay, so if I click on the configure option here, I should see the bundle and the activity. And if I close for a moment, I can see that I already have activities defined. Joao, you share this client secret with me, so probably that's something that you are trying. So yeah, it's there. So in this case, it's interesting because this code has this clear account option here, which will delete all the activities and bundles from our code. The reason for this clear account button is in case you have, if you're doing testing and you are unsure of what's happening and you are just testing, this is something for you to clear your account and start fresh, right? This helps a lot, especially when we are trying a lot of things and code is failing and we don't know why. Probably there is some wrong app bundle somewhere, so clear the account and start fresh. So let me try this. Let me try update DWG param, and let me select the version 24 and create. So you'll see that the bundle and activity, and it's creating the new bundle. And as I already have a few bundles defined, it's saying that this is now v3, and the activity is already defined, so it's not doing anything, right? It's just skipping that one. On the next step, we're going to implement the clear account feature, so you can then clear this and run again. So let's try that in a moment. Okay, so next one is the execute work item, and this is the actual execution of our code. So let's click here, and the main function we have is this start work item. So that's the one that will be executed several times. So let's copy and paste in here so we can understand what we have. All right, so let's go to the top. This is collecting information from the input, so the width and height and the activity name that we selected. And this is the ID of the browser that was created by SignalR. This is essentially a unique identification for that user, for that browser session. Now we can get the input file from the user. So these lines here are getting the file from the browser to my server. My server is going to the OSS API on Forge and creating a bucket, which is essentially a folder. To then here we can upload that input file to the bucket, right? We have to make our files available for design to design automation on some server on the cloud. So let me upload this file to OSS. That's what we're doing here. Okay, now that everything is ready, we can start preparing the information to send to design automation. So let's prepare the input file. We're saying that the input file is hosted on Autodesk. This is the bucket key that we're using. That's the file name. And this is how to access that. So we are telling Design Automation, go to OSS and get the file. And here's the access token you need to get that file. The input JSON, we're not hosting that on the cloud. We are passing that JSON directly to Design Automation. To do that, the input is type data application JSON, and then the data formatted like this. Last, we have to tell Design Automation where to save the file. So we're telling when you're done, save the file back to this location, again using the access token. And I'm saving the file back to OSS. Now that I have the input file, input JSON, and output file definition, I can start the work item. So I have the input file, input JSON, and output file. I'm also telling Design Automation to, when it's done, call me back, telling that it's done. And this is the callback URL to call me back. You can see here that I'm passing the ID of the user, which is the ID of the browser, and I'm passing the file name that he's executing. Keep in mind that one user on the browser may execute several work items, but the way we define the output is that, let me go back here, and just to point this out, we add a prefix on the output with the date in seconds. So hopefully that should be enough to make all the outputs unique, right? So we tell the system to save that file back to Forge, right here. And I'm when it calls me back, I'm telling this is the file you should be looking for, because that's the file this user just executed. So that's how we tell Design Automation to run, and we start the work item and send the ID back to the browser so the browser knows what's going on. Okay, that's a lot here. If you have any questions, raise your hand or type on the Q&A. Last is the callback URL. So that's how Design Automation will call back our application, telling that the job is done. So let's paste this in here. So that's the endpoint, callback. And as soon as we receive the callback, we are going to get the body of the callback and inform our client, the browser, that the execution is now done. The body of the callback also contains the report URL. So it's very important. This is very important. It contains a complete Oops, what's going on here? It contains a complete output from Design Automation with all the steps that it did. In this case, we are getting the output, we are downloading that output, and then sending that to the browser. If on a production application, what I would recommend you is to download that report and save on your logs, so you can later on track what happened on your executions. So this report is what you need on your logging system, so you can understand what happened. Last, we send to the browser how to download the file. Remember that we know the file name, we know the bucket name, so we are just sending to our browser a URL to download that file. This is the last function, the clear account that I mentioned. So let's copy and add in here. Okay, so let's try to execute now. As we're using a key that was used before, there are a few other activities here. So let's go to configure and clear account, right? I want to remove everything from my account before I can proceed. What I would recommend you to do is, after you clear account, you don't know how long it will take because you may have several bundles and activities on your account. So it may take some time. What I would recommend is to refresh the page and until this list is empty. So in this case, nothing found, the list is empty. It means that your account is now clean. So let's go to configure again. Select the bundle, DWG, select the engine 24 and create or update my bundle and activity. So defining the app bundle, that's the ID of the bundle, and that's the ID of the activity. As you can see, is the prefix is my nickname, which is my client ID. That's the name of the bundle, that's the name of the activity, and that's the alias. And that's also the version of the app bundle. Okay, now we can test our code. We have one activity here. Let's test our code. Before we can do that, we have to go back to our tutorial and go to run and debug. And there's some explanation on how to do it. And there is the sample file. Remember that we are opening the file and changing two parameters. So we need a file with those parameters. So let's click on the sample files. We are looking in this case for the DWG. So let's click here to download and download. Download, come on. Okay, there it is. And let's go back and also download the Revit file here. And download, there it is. Okay, so let's go back to our code. Click to select the file. Go to the downloads and I see my files here. Let's click on it. And yeah, that should be it. Which one? I select the Revit file. So let me do it again because I created the DWG, right? So open. Okay, so DWG parameter, DWG param activity. Let's start it. So if I open here, so it's starting the work item. It's running, and I'm now waiting for the callback. You see that I get a callback on my ngrok, and my code is returning OK, saying okay, I acknowledge that, and I got the callback. The application, the sample here, will then it will say failed instruction for some reason, and you have to identify what happened here, and some other information. And then this is the one that we are really looking for. This is telling us what happened. And AutoCAD exit with code 1 indication and error. What was it? So let's see, what did we do wrong? AutoCAD engine, starting, opening console, directory. Let's try again. Okay, so something is not good here.
Was okay with a different engine, you know, a different version.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think my code is not too compatible with 2024. So let's clear account. Yeah, we did this code for 23, I believe. Let's try this, create update. So it's running here. I think I was too fast to create, and let's clear account again. And clear account is not that fast. 23.1, create update. Okay, so I think my code is not compatible with that version. DWG, start work item. Okay, fingers crossed. DWG file.
I tried that with the 23, maybe 22.
But that's the one we just did, right?
So this is the 23-1, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's the update one for 23. It's always a lot of excitement and emotions. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, there's probably some version going on there. Let me try the Revit one. Revit 21. Create an update. Let's choose a file and select Revit file. And start work item. Oh, I did something bad here. Yeah, my bad this time. I was executing the Revit file against AutoCAD. That will never work, right? Okay. Revit usually takes a bit longer to execute. AutoCAD is really fast. Okay. At least the error message for AutoCAD, Revit is a bit better. Okay, so let's try again. I was forgetting to add the input width and height. You see here, I forgot to fill this form, and as this sample is really simple and does not do any additional checking, it's accepting you to run it without this. So let's try the DWG again. Okay, success. Oh, we tried that so many times. It's funny when it fails like that. It's just because we are too excited, right? So yeah, so the width and height, I was missing those two attributes here. It's which is a good point to mention that uh, we should have a form validation on our application. This is just a demo. We don't want to make it too complicated, so that's why it's very simple. But you know, it makes the point, right? Let's try Revit again, and select Revit file here, and start. By the way, when the execution is completed, there's a link to download the file, right? So this tutorial, it's very simple and meant to demonstrate design automation only. So we are not showing the file on viewer. We are just running the code and giving you the option to download the results at the end. If you did the training Tuesday, that shows how to update and translate models. The file is already there after design automation is done. You just have to do an additional step to translate those files so you can view it. So it's definitely possible to see the results. Oh, success. Okay, everything is working now because we just missed those two values right here. So it is possible to use the tutorial we did Monday to execute, to view the models at the end of the process. Okay, so with that, that's what we did here. You can now download the resulting file with the output, and as I said, keep record of your work item report. This is very important if you're running this on production. You have several work items executing every day. So if you have a problem from a customer, you can always go back and inspect the report and see what went wrong. So let's see if I have any questions here. Can you modify mod directly from BIM 360 document without input choose field, input choose file? Yeah. Yeah, you can use files from any location, including BIM 360. Just a small correction: you cannot use signed URL from BIM 360, only from OSS. So you can use a file from BIM 360. It's just a matter of providing the URL to the BIM 360 location and the access token to access that file. The sample that Joao mentioned uses that. Let me actually open this sample here so you can, to make the point. Why is this not working? Copy. Okay, so this sample is just because he was mentioning this sample, it's using design automation, but you don't have to manually select a file. It's triggering automatically from webhooks. So as soon as you upload a file to BIM 360, it will trigger this webhook, this notification. We then grab the file and send that file to design automation for execution. So it is possible to you don't even have to select the file or do anything. You just say, whenever there is a new version of that file, run this code for me. So it is possible to connect the APIs like that. So yeah, I hope that answered your question, Rashid. And that sample is definitely something to look at. Okay, so that's it. One interesting point to help you debug is when you use this kind of sample with ngrok, you can see the callback here, right? So you can see that you're getting the callbacks, and pay attention to the expiration time. So if because this will stop working after that, so you have to get a new ngrok endpoint. Okay, so this is time for you to complete this last step. Code for creating the activity, code for executing the work item. And there is just one more question. Yeah, thank you for the training, was helpful. Yeah, glad to know. Thank you, Rashid. We are planning to do that again, of course. This is the third time we are doing, and the next time will likely be in 6 months from now, around October timeframe. We did last year in April and October, and we are again April and October. As soon as we have the dates, we are going to announce it on our blog post, on our blog. So just stay tuned for that. And we are going to share the recordings on our blog as well. Just as we finish this week. So this is the last session. So next week, we are going to get all the recordings, do some cleanup, and post on our blog as well. And okay, any other questions? I started to post a lot of questions on the Q&A and the chat, so thank you for participating. Hope it was helpful. You can still ask questions on Stack Overflow. Just use one of the tags we have, we monitor. For design automation, the tag will be Autodesk-design automation. It's very simple. Just post your question there. We're going to answer that very quickly. And with that, thank you very much for attending today. We will definitely we will leave this Zoom running for a few more minutes if you have additional questions. But yeah, that's it for the day. Thank you very much for attending. Hope you have a nice weekend, and I hope to see you on the next training as well, or accelerator, or any other event. Thank you.
Thank you all. Hope to see you soon in accelerators also.
Yes. Thank you, John, for your help. Stop recording.